Hello, and welcome to Let's Make a Top-Down Shooter. This video is about creating an exploding FireBall gameplay ability that applies multiple stacks of the burning effect. And a special thanks to all my supporters. Your support is what makes this worth doing. So before we get into the FireBall, I'm just going to add a minor bug fix here. When our character is spawned, if there is a default weapon class, it gets created, spawned, and equipped. The problem is when the weapon is spawned, it has a overlap, which is happening immediately, which is equipping the weapon, but we're calling equipping weapon here. So we could just remove this bit here or go into equip weapon. And in the case where there's no new weapon or the weapon is equivalent, well, is the same as the new weapon, we'll just return. So now that we'll be using the primary ability, I'm going to go into our third person character and I'm going to remove this temporary, adding the gameplay effect to ourselves. And to fix another minor issue, when we start the game and choose our character, there is a divide by 0. So the reason that's happening is because in here, under tick, well actually not tick, kind of like tick, when our shield is changing, we're calling update bars. The default value for max shield is 0, and then we're immediately calling applying default attributes to set it to 50 for the character. The problem is there's effectively one tick or one update where this happens to be 0. So I'm just going to throw in a max call here, make sure that it's higher than 0, and just put that in there. And no more divide by 0. So to start, we're going to create another new Niagara system. For this one, we're going to use the same new system from selected emitters. We're going to scroll down to scroll past omnidirectional burst. We call this NS FireBall. So I'm here going to change the sprite renderer. Starter content also has an explosion sub UV. So as before, we set that up. We go to sub UV, set it to the number of frames. So that looks like 6 by 6. That means we have to add sub UV in here. Set this to the sprite renderer. Then we also want to shorten the life. We'll set that to 0.5 so it's consistent for both min and max. Going to change the velocity to 800. I want to disable gravity and set the scale the sprite size here. We're just going to start out smaller. Move this back a bit. Remove drag and the initial size. Make that 50. And we're going to create the actual fireball projectile. So that is just an actor. Call that BP fireball. This is going to have a sphere. Make that the default root. Add a projectile movement component. In the sphere, we want to change scale to 0.5. It's still fairly large, so could be a lot smaller. And the collision, we're going to switch to overlap all dynamic, and then switch to custom. And like our projectile before, we want it to hit the world static and physics bodies, and overlap world dynamic and pawn, and then ignore all of this. In the projectile movement component, we want a speed of 500 and no gravity. We're going to call set lifespan. Set this to 3 seconds. In the case where it overlaps with anything, we're going to just destroy it. If it hits anything, we're also just going to destroy it. And then we have our destroyed event. In both those cases, this will just call a function we'll call explode. In the explode function, we're going to spawn our Niagara system. This will be at our actor location. And this will be the fireball. So when it's destroyed, either through the lifetime expiring, hitting an enemy, hitting a wall, etc., it will do the explode system. And then we will call sphere overlap actors. This will also be at the actor location. We'll throw a radius of about 250. The object types we want are pawns. And then our class filter will be BP enemy character. As long as it hits something, we're going to get the owner of this fireball, get the ability system component from that, and we'll just promote that to a local variable, owner ASC. And then we want to use our actors for a for each loop. We're going to apply the burning effect to each of those actors. However, I'm going to do it a few times. So I'm going to make a variable here. I'm going to call this burning count. This will be an int. And this will be goes on spawn. So this will effectively add a number of stacks based on the burning count. And as always, to do that, we just want our owner ASC. We're going to call apply gameplay effect to target. And the target is the ability system component here. This will be burning. Lastly, in here, in our tick, I'm going to set another variable. We'll call this destination. This is a vector, also exposed on spawn. The intent of destination is basically you click somewhere in the world and that's where the fireball goes. If it gets to that destination, then it should blow up. So whether it hits something or it expires or not, well, or it doesn't expire, when it gets to that, it will blow up. So the easy way to do that is you take your destination You take your actor location, you find the distance between the two, and if it's within some range, then that's when you blow up. I'm going to do it just a little differently. In the cases where you may shoot the fireball off in some direction, the trajectory is slightly off and then it never gets within that range of that location. And this logic is also good for homing missiles in some cases. But effectively, it's going to be, we're taking these two, subtracting them, getting the length. We're going to compare the, well, sorry, I need to add a variable. So this will be our closest distance. Set that to a float. Going to set that value initially as very large. So if our new distance is greater than our closest distance, sorry, drag that out and hold B. That is when we explode. Otherwise, we are just, oops. Just setting that to our closest distance. So effectively, every tick, we're checking to see the distance between our intended destination and where we are. That will basically be a number that's getting smaller, smaller, smaller. If at any point that number is larger than the closest it has ever been, then it'll explode. So then we need to add our gameplay ability. This is, of course, a TDS gameplay ability, which we'll call GA FireBall. This is a primary ability. So we're first going to start by calling commit ability. In the case where this is false, we will just call end ability. All of my testing has shown that commit ability at the beginning of activate ability will call end ability by itself, but it's still good to have. So for this ability, we're just going to get our player controller to call get hit result under cursor by channel. We're going to break the hit result from that, get the location. We're going to save this location as destination. I'm going to alt-click this so that I can then right-click and split both of those because I want the destination Z to just be 50. Close this back up. With that, we're also going to get our avatar actor from actor info so that we can call get actor location. Similarly, going to set this to a variable called loc. And similarly, we want this to be level with the other one, so we'll just set it to 50. We're going to take our destination subtract our spawn location so that we can rotate from X vector, rotation from rotation from X vector. Incidentally, if you just drag a vector into a rotator, it will just give you that, which is what I could have done over here. Like that. For this, we're also just going to save it for consistency. And that gives us our spawn location, spawn rotation, and because these are exposed on spawn, our destination, and we'll set the burning count to 3. Lastly, as always, anytime you exit from activating an ability, you should call end ability, or using it again in the future will not happen. Just checking there are no other paths. Okay. All right, now if we go back to our fire character, Quinn, in our default abilities, we just add the new fireball. So now I go in here and I hit Q, you'll see why it doesn't work. It's exploding immediately, and the reason that is because previously when we created weapons, our weapon base basically has a skeletal mesh and sphere. The skeletal mesh is a world static, which we have to set for hit, and the sphere is a world dynamic, so that's fine. Well, it will be fine. We're going to fix this by going back into our project settings under collision. We're going to add a new object channel for our weapon. And the default response will be ignore. Then we go back in here, swap this. It's unfortunate you can't change the object type when it's set to no collision. So you have to set this to custom, set that to weapon. The weapon itself should not collide with, actually in this case I guess it just can ignore everything. And then similarly in the sphere, set this to weapon. So that in our BP fireball, we're not colliding or overlapping with weapons. Now when we try this, it's actually still colliding immediately. We can go into our fireball, we'll see in overlap, just print out what it's colliding with. Go back in. You can see that it's colliding with our player. So the problem with that is our fireball has to hit pawns, or it has to overlap with pawns. So to get around that, we can basically, well, we could do a few things. We could have split out the character from the enemy on a object type level. That's sometimes a good option. Alternatively, we can then just cast this to character. So in the case where it's casting or it's hitting a character, we want it to only collide or only overlap if it's the enemy character. So then we can also cast that to enemy character. In that case, it will collide and get destroyed. The problem is then it no longer collides with this because this was a world dynamic. So if we go back in here, in the case where it's overlapping and it's a character, it goes here. If it's an enemy character, it's fine. If it's not the enemy character, that means it's a player character, then nothing happens. In the case where it wasn't a character at all, we can also just call destroy. There we go. And to show this on the enemies, we can go into a level. Okay, that was really cool. It's a bug, but a bug that looks really cool. So that should give them, oh no, it's not applying the stacks at all. Oh, neither did that. Did I forget to set? Hey, that might have been it. Oh, owner ASC. Oh, because I did not in here. When I spawned the actor, I never set the owner. Oops. Which is this guy. But as you can see, when it hits that destination, it's starting the explosion part. The question is, why is it? Oops. Oh, I called explode directly. I was supposed to call destroy actor. But hey, if you want an effect that looks like that, it's one way to do it. And yes, that was adding a ridiculous amount of stacks to those enemies, so they died immediately. There we go. It's on fire. It's taking damage. Same thing. And then the range is about that. That's the last one. All right. So you can see that was about the range. It's close to. I mean, 250 is close to where it worked out for that particle system. That's something you need to play around with if you want to make it work accurately. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video and would like to see more, you know what to do. And if you would like to support this channel or just want to download the project files, you can do so through my Patreon linked below.